As normal, you never quite know what to expect when you head out to enjoy a day of boating, kinda like this crew found out. They went out to enjoy a day of fishing, hanging out on the water, and the next thing they know, they wound up hanging out in the water after their vessel went down. Fortunately, the crew was able to grab some debris from around the boat and hang out until they could be rescued, but still a crazy scene, just like some of the crazy scenes we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Taiwan, and I'm not sure a vessel has seen so much action in such a short period of time as the boat we're seeing here, as a China-registered heavy lift vessel that had previously been involved in an accident just 2 weeks ago at Taiwan's Keelung port has now run aground after battling severe weather off the coast of Taiwan. The incident started several weeks back when the cargo vessel Yuzhao Keelung was entering the port of Keelung, approaching Pier 20, when all of a sudden its cargo, which happened to be a crane, wound up colliding with another crane that was on the pier, causing the fixed one that was on the pier to come crashing down. Now, somehow in this situation, miraculously, no major injuries were reported, well, of course, other than the damage, which local port authorities estimate to be somewhere in the range of around $9.3 million. Now, if all that commotion wasn't enough for the vessel, what happens next is, as the vessel winds up departing the port of Keelung on its way to China, and only a few short hours into its trip, it winds up in trouble and winds up having to abandon ship with all 17 crew getting on board a Coast Guard vessel, and the ship winds up colliding with the shore. Really is a wild and crazy couple days for the crew on board this ship. Fortunately, everybody made it through the whole ordeal safely. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to the Red Sea, where a situation that has been unfolding for almost 2 months is finally starting to come to a close, and that's going to be the MV So Union, which was an oil tanker that was carrying 150,000 tons of crude oil and was brought under attack by Houthi militants approximately 2 months ago. Fortunately, in this situation, the entire crew of the vessel was able to be rescued and pulled off the ship, but the ship was left afloat and ablaze for almost 40 days, as salvage attempts couldn't be done due to the proximity of the coastline and the possibility that any vessels that went in to try and salvage the ship could also be attacked. Eventually, European and regional authorities wound up banding together to go ahead and form a coalition to try and protect some tug vessels to get out there and try and salvage the boat before the fires continue to rage on and the possibility increases of the vessel leaking oil into the ocean, which would have been a huge natural disaster. The whole incident began to unfold back on August 21st, and now finally this past week, after 49 days of fire, a technically perilous salvage operation, diplomatic delays, and many other issues, the So Union has finally reached the Port of Suez and is now ready to begin the second portion of its salvage operation, which is going to be trying to get as much of the original payload off the vessel as possible. At this time, salvers are not 100% certain exactly how much of the oil they will be able to get off the vessel, but they're estimating they should be able to get over 90%, but it's just a good thing to see that a natural disaster has been averted by getting this vessel back out of the open ocean and into port. Our next story to make the boating news this week wasn't quite so lucky though, as it's going to take us over to Singapore, where this was the scene just this past week, where the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore has confirmed a significant bunker fuel spill in Singapore off the coast of Changi. The spill occurred between the Bahamas flagged carrier Ines Corrado and a licensed bunker carrier. It's estimated at this time that 5 metric tons of oil has spilled off the Singapore coast from this incident. Fortunately, the Maritime Port Authority had a craft that was able to arrive at the scene within 10 minutes of being reported and immediately began spraying dispersants to try and mitigate the environmental impact, and the bunkering operation was immediately halted as soon as the spill was realized. As a precautionary measure, the Port Authority has deployed a current buster off of Changi to try and recover any oil that might be sighted on the water. The incident did not impact any navigational traffic in the area. However, the Port Authority announced it will be conducting a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding the spill. Thanks for watching, crew. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button.